Hello and welcome. I am Matt Roddy, and this is the Greater Prescott podcast, where we talk about, you guessed it, all things Greater Prescott. Today, I want to welcome my guest, Adam Mendenhall with Fuel Break LLC. Adam, thank you for joining me.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
What's Fuel Break LLC?
So it's basically a business that I started a few years back that focuses on FireWise and firewising people's houses, as well as tree removal and tree trimming. Basically landscaping, but without, we focus on certain things.
Yeah.
We don't kind of have the full gamut. We do some of that stuff, but
The FireWise majority of the time.
Yeah.
For people listening, if you drive around town, if you go into most of the communities around here, you'll see signs that say we're a FireWise community, which I would have not had any clue before I moved here, but now I get it.
Yeah, it's a pretty important thing. So
I'm going to give you some time to speak to that as we move along in the program. But yeah, that's what Adam does. Adam's a tree guy, and what people are going to learn is that I would argue that your expert angle at what you do is really important. Meaning you fight fires in the on season and you do fuel break in the off season. So we'll get into all that, but I just think it's fascinating how your FireWise business kind of is a result, in a sense, of your passion behind some of the work you've done in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that's
it's really cool.
Yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to start it, there's no good in having knowledge if you can't share it.
Amen.
So I try to take everything that I learn and help people out.
Yeah.
So
cool. Well, I know I've learned a smidgen about you before the podcast, but let's get into it. Where were you born and raised? What did you do when you were a kid? And let's kick it off.
So I'm originally from New Hampshire. Lived there basically all my life and came out to Arizona for college.
Okay.
Right here in Prescott. So went to Embry Riddle. It was weird getting into what I do now because, on the East Coast, I mean, you don't hear about wildfires. You don't hear about, no one really has a need for kind of what I provide now. Out there, Yeah. So that's really, it took me a while, unfortunately, to find what I was, I guess, passionate about, but I'm glad that I did, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, what'd you do in New Hampshire growing up? Like really set the context. I assume you grew up in a place where there's lots of trees.
Yeah.
Because Southern Arizona, I mean, aside from a little chunk of Prescott, we don't have many trees.
So lived next to 100 acres of conservation land.
Okay.
For most of my life, and they had dirt bike trails.
Yeah, okay.
So four-wheeling trails.
Yep.
Did a lot of that. I hunted. I was a big hunter.
Hunt what?
Mainly deer and turkey
were
my two. And then I also really loved duck hunting.
Okay.
So that was a lot of fun. And then
were you ever a bow hunter?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't have the skills for
that.
I
know
it's tough.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, a lot of credit for those people that can do that.
Okay.
So I did that. Played a ton of sports.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really about it. Just kind of
what sports?
Normal life. Started with soccer, and then soccer and hockey were always the two.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got older, I wanted something a little more physical than soccer.
Yeah.
So I switched to lacrosse instead of soccer. So I played lacrosse and hockey throughout high school.
Okay.
Those are my two big ones. But
what major injuries have you had? Any? Okay.
No.
No ACL,
I've had
a
couple sprains.
Okay.
I've never
well done.
Never broken a bone.
Well done.
Yeah, which is pretty good. Yeah. So
I feel like that's what those sports are best at is really banging you up.
Yeah, I mean I got hit one time in hockey, got checked into the boards and I was out for quite a while.
Okay.
My back, and it knocked the wind out of me. So that was probably like my most severe. But I was out for like a week maybe. just resting it up. It was just more soreness than anything.
Yeah.
So,
man, this is really interesting. So my kids just asked me, we just had a big snow here. So they asked me, like, what do people do where it snows all the time? And we got to, and I'm no expert, but we got to kind of educate them that people actually do stuff in the winter outside, right? Like snowmobiling, and I mean, you can speak to it much better, but it's so funny being from Southern Arizona and being able to see through your lens on what you did as a kid. Like, wintertime was just another time that you did different things.
Yeah, for us it was snowmobiling. I had a snowmobile.
That's so
and
cool.
I was fortunate. There was a lake right by my house that we had a trail from our house to the lake.
Okay.
So you could go cruise out on the frozen lake.
Because it freezes over.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the biggest thing, especially if you played hockey, but even people that didn't, surprisingly, was skating on the frozen lakes.
Oh, okay.
And playing, we called it pond hockey. And I mean, there's tournaments that people play,
awesome.
In Chicago, in New Hampshire, in Maine, and they'll have 100 teams, and they clear the ice, and they have a huge tournament, and they have snow plows that go out, and ice fishing's another one that people love to do.
Have you done that?
Yeah, I've done that. You get used to the cold, and as we were talking about kind of before the podcast, now that I've lived in Arizona for so long, it's weird because I don't know if I could handle the cold.
I know, right?
Like I used to be able to. So, but I mean, like
it was no different growing up in Tucson where it's 110.
Right.
And like that was normal to me. And it was, of course, hot, but like you grew up where it was cold and that was just normal to you.
Yeah, skiing, snowboarding. I mean, everyone skis or snowboards, and you just find different activities, and,
I love it.
And you're just used to it. Yeah. So it was fun, though. It was, as a kid growing up in it, obviously, when you didn't have to do the work of shoveling,
you get it.
It was a lot of fun, And then as you got a little bit older and you had to
more
do the shoveling and stuff like that, you were like, oh, I see why my parents don't like the snow that much.
Any idea on average winter how much snow?
I mean, it depends. Like, we would get what they called a nor'easter, and that would usually come off the ocean. Okay. And that would dump, overnight you'd get 2+ feet. Okay. So, I mean, it was a lot. I remember my birthday's in March, and I remember having snow in the middle of March that was over a foot. Yeah. And it started in November, December. Yeah. So it's like, what the heck? Yeah. 6 solid months of.
One of my guests was a man named Andrew. He's a physical therapist from Iowa. Okay. He shares similar winter experiences but now since he's moved out here, he's playing golf, in January, and he's a huge golfer. That's his focus when it comes to physical therapy. And he's just amazed. He's like, I didn't know a place like this existed. Yeah. Like, it's January. Right. We used to be getting snowed in right now, and
it's
just how different
so
it
nice
is
to have the nice weather, and like we talked about before, I miss aspects of it.
Of course.
It was fun, and when you lived in it all the time, I mean, just like anything in life, you get used to it. But now being out here, it's like so much nicer. Yeah. And not, that last storm. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, actually, what kind of memories did that bring up when we just got? It was at least 2 feet of snow, I'd imagine. Yeah. I don't know what the final tally was, but it was a bunch.
So it brought up a lot. For me, as you know, the folks might not know, but you interviewed my wife before, who owns a salon. So, for me, it was just kind of go mode. It brought me back to when I worked and had to clean up, and get ready for the day because unlike out here, nothing shuts down out there.
Right.
I mean, it would have to be a lot of snow, and it's only because the infrastructure, they're prepared for snow. Yep. And not that Prescott did a bad job.
No,
but
we're just not. That's not who we are.
Right. I mean, they have hundreds of snow plows for one city. Yes. We have a couple snow plows for
the Quad Cities,
right,
probably.
exactly. So,
yeah,
I mean, as a kid, if there was more than 2 feet, you probably didn't have school.
Okay.
If there was between a foot to 2 feet, you probably had a 90-minute delay.
Gotcha.
And then anything under a foot, I mean, that was like, I remember,
don't be late.
I remember learning how to drive, and the first thing my parents did was take me to my high school parking lot right when it snowed.
Perfect.
And my dad just basically said, go have fun.
Yeah.
Like, do all the stuff you do on your four-wheeler, do
right.
donuts, get some speed and slam on the brakes and see what the car is going to do. You know, it was different because it was something you dealt with for so many months out of the year.
Yep.
It kind of had to be instilled in you, like how you drive in it, how you get used to it, because it just doesn't stop out there. Right. You know? So.
I love it. I love hearing these things. I find it fascinating that everyone grows up, in a sense, somewhere different, under a different family, doing different things, and everyone just has their own unique perspective on life. And I think that's one of the fun things that I like to learn about people. I'm a little selfish in that I get to decide what questions I ask you, Adam, and I think this stuff's fun.
No,
like it's just
fun,
it's because I grew up in Southern Arizona where I was literally outside all the time. And I think there's an average of 330 days of sunshine down there, and they get no rain, and it's just that's what I grew up in. So I was outside. I rode my bike. I had RC cars. Like I swam. Like we swam all the time. Right. And that's just what we did. So different than what you did.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. It's really interesting, especially living in both places and see. You know, Arizona is very. For the people that have been out to the East Coast, I would, anything from Chicago east, really. The lifestyle, like people are in such a rush out there, and it's like, it's crazy. And coming out here, it's a little bit more laid back. People, are a little bit more friendly. East Coast can get a bad rap sometimes, and people can get crazy out there, and so growing up in that, a lot of people tell me I don't sit well. Okay. I always have to be doing something. And I think it's just a product of how I was brought up and where I was brought up. Yeah. And it's crazy for me to see. Getting older, I much prefer this over that. Makes sense. It was like a rat race out there. Right. Everyone's just on all the time. Yeah. And it's funny now that I've stepped out of it to really look back and be like, holy.
You now have the perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's nuts.
And I wouldn't say it's right or wrong. It's just how it is.
Yeah, it's just how it is, There's I don't think there's any right or wrong. It's just whatever you're comfortable with or whatever you were brought up with.
How much time have you spent in Southern California?
I've been to San Diego once or twice.
I ask because talk about laid back.
Yeah, I noticed a huge difference when I was.
It's like the further west you go, and then all of a sudden you hit the coast, and it's
crazy.
Yeah, it's just a different culture.
It's night and day. It is night and day, and I would encourage people if they have the opportunity to experience both sides of it
100%
because it's really funny, and it might make people realize kind of why people act the way they act.
I could not agree more,
and give a little bit more perspective to each other. For sure.
I'm really blessed that I have had the opportunity to do quite a bit of traveling. I spent almost a year in Chicago. I did a summer in New Jersey. I've had probably more experiences than some people. And it's just fun to be able to kind of connect the dots, and different areas have different cultures and all that stuff. It's great.
That's probably one of my favorite parts about what I do now for a living is getting to travel and then see places that I haven't seen and experience different experiences like that.
And actually, just on a total side note, I think Airbnb is really special because it does allow you to get literally an apartment, say, in the middle of the city and kind of really get to take in more of that cultural aspect than being in a hotel that's just very sterile. And so I think that's special. I think it's really special that people can experience different cultures, different places, and every city is totally different. Prescott Valley is different than Prescott, which is different than Chino. And we're only 15, 20 minutes from, that's just how it is.
Well, it's bad to say, but I don't mind Prescott Valley, but the drive out there, like it's a 10, 15-minute drive, and I dread like anything past Costco.
Right?
Like,
isn't it hilarious?
I try to make a day out of it. Like, if I'm going into Prescott Valley, I want to make multiple stops because I don't want to have to go back out there. Drive. But it's literally 20 minutes away at worst.
It's less.
If there's
traffic. From your house.
Right, exactly. So it's crazy just thinking about it. It's
we are funny people like that. I agree. Yeah.
It's nuts. Yep. So it's interesting though.
Yeah.
It's cool.
So you came out to Prescott for Embry Riddle so you could work on your pilot license.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So
the whole being interested in flight.
Okay, so when I was younger, I always had a passion for flight. Okay. I used to beg. I was one of those kids that would see a plane and look up. Okay. I would stare. I still do it now. I still catch myself. Mm-hmm. And it fascinated me that could be a job. Like I feel like I was very aware very early that I was not going to do well sitting behind a desk.
Okay.
So I wanted something that was kind of adventurous as a job, and that would be fun. And my earliest memory was really wanting an RC airplane.
Oh, I'd love one.
So by our house, there was an RC airplane field, and I would always see them. So I finally got one and learned how to fly them, and I did that for probably 4 or 5 years. And then, flight's not cheap. No matter what anyone tells you, you need a lot of expendable income to be able to do it. So I got, for a birthday one year, to see if I was really interested, my parents got me they called it like an explorer flight.
Okay.
So you went up with an instructor. It was like an hour long. Yeah. You got to play around with the controls and fly it a little bit.
Funny you say that. That's on my bucket list for around here in Prescott.
Really?
I just want to see the area.
You should
I just want to go on a little 2-seater.
It's beautiful around here, especially Sedona. You go out towards Sedona, and it is... it's amazing. And I've got to do some really cool flights around here in school. They have you do like a long cross country by yourself. So I went, my first cross country was Prescott to Kingman to Lake Havasu and then back to Prescott. And then my long one was Prescott to Palm Springs to Carlsbad.
Cool.
And then straight back from Carlsbad. And that was like, seeing the Salton Sea, like from the air, was amazing. And then now in my job, flying in a helicopter, this past year I got to fly over the Grand Canyon, which was like...
That's epic.
Yeah. It was the whole time I had my phone out.
Yeah, you think it's good standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. I'm sure it pales in comparison.
It was amazing just because you could see so much more, So... Yeah, it's just kind of always been a passion, and I totally forgot what the question was because I went on a tangent.
Flight school.
So, I originally went to a school back home on the East Coast. It was called Daniel Webster College, and I went there because they had hockey, which was my main sport, and they had flight, and they recruited me for hockey, so I was like, this is the perfect world. And the summer going into my freshman year, they got bought out.
Oh.
And the company that bought them out canceled the flight program. So I had to do my first semester there. And while I was there, I was looking for another flight school. And Embry Riddle came up. It's pretty well known everywhere when you look at flight schools. And they had Daytona Beach or Prescott. And I had never been further west than Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I said, forget Daytona. I've been there before. I've been to Florida when I was young.
Great place.
Yeah, it was great, but I had been there. I said, let's go to Arizona. So I got accepted. I came out here with my family, did a tour of the school for like 2 days, and the next semester I was driving out here and moving out.
Awesome.
And probably one of the best decisions that I made, and I love it. I mean, I'm still like an aviation nerd.
Yeah, good.
Deep down.
Yep.
It still fascinates me. I have a lot of friends that fly for the airlines and or the military that went to Embry Riddle, and it's a lot of fun.
Are those the two primary paths, so to speak? Commercial, military?
Yeah.
What did you want to do?
So originally I thought commercial, airlines. I thought about the military. Embry Riddle offered a program, especially the Marine ROTC that they had, where you were guaranteed a flight slot if you made it through their program.
Oh, wow.
And one of my buddies had done it, but they had done that for so many people. When he graduated, it took him 3 years before he got into flight school because they were so backed up.
Yeah.
So luckily he made it through. He flies.
And they probably don't do that anymore, or that system.
Yeah. I mean, it was really tough.
Yeah.
So, and then on the airline side, they also had partnerships with JetBlue.
Okay.
So you could get into those programs. I really just wanted to fly.
Yeah.
The most fun I had flying, the school offered a course that was called Upset Recovery, and you went in a stunt plane, and we flew. There's an invisible box behind Granite Mountain, and that's like an aerial acrobatics box, and they strapped you in a parachute, and you got to go out and do loops and barrel rolls, and it was the most fun I've ever had flying an airplane.
Sign me up.
Yeah. I mean, it was a blast, but I just knew I wanted to do something aviation. Cargo's another area. Crops, fire.
Yep.
When you get into the crops and the fire, the amount of hours that you would need to even qualify for those positions is enormous.
Okay.
One of the biggest things that happened to me when I was in school was the Sully-Sullenberg incident. And what that did for aviation, and it actually made me, luckily it happened at a time where I was running out of money for flight, but it made me change my major. So I was a major in flight, minor in aviation business administration. So airport management. And I flip-flopped those. And one of the reasons was when the whole thing with Sully happened, the National Transportation Safety Board, they investigate everything, and then they look for recommendations. And one of Sully's recommendations was, if I didn't have the flight hours that I had, I would have not made that decision. Yeah. And what they did is they raised the minimum flight hours in order to get a job for commercial.
Okay.
So they bumped it up to about 1,500 to 2,000 hours. Well, you graduate school with all of your ratings with about 250 hours. So now you have this huge debt, and you have to start paying student loans, and then you have to go flight instruct, which is people that fly planes do not make as much money as people think. It takes years to rank up and make that money. So it was a really sticky situation there for a while.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and now the industry is seeing the effects of that because there's a lot of people that are forced to retire because you have to retire at a certain age, 65, I think. Okay. And they have a pilot shortage. But because of this new...
The gap between what you get out of school with X amount of hours and what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
It's really... I mean, it's a crazy industry.
That is fascinating. So there's something similar going on with contractors. Just there's a lot of contractors retiring out and not enough coming in, and just this whole supply and demand thing that is, to me, a fascinating conversation on how the heck what do we do?
Right. No, I mean, it's crazy. And the other thing is just, I can't stress enough the financial commitment for someone that wants to do, whether it's a doctor, a pilot, it boggles my mind that people that are willing to do these jobs that other people aren't. Not that other jobs are less important.
No, not at all.
But these very important jobs, the amount of money that these people have to spend on training just to even get looked at. And, you know, you come out, and I had a buddy that was flying for an airline right out of school, and I'm not kidding you. He was it SkyWest? It might have been SkyWest. Okay. And I mean, I'm pretty sure his starting pay was like $15 an hour. And he was, you know, traveling 24/7.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this guy has a degree. Yeah. And he's starting out at that. Yeah. And he has hundreds of thousands of dollars in school debt. And that's what this person's making. And it's crazy. It's a really tough, not saying you can't do it.
Of course not.
It's a really tough industry to make it. And you got to get over those little humps.
Absolutely. Having the right expectations is really important.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I'll be honest, I didn't have the right expectations when I went in.
Of course not.
And then I got involved in it, and it was like...
I know. Yeah. Are you familiar with what's happening with the whole university system right now and kind of where we're going?
I've heard a little bit about it.
This is a conversation that we don't have enough time for, but the long and the short of it is, you know, the student debt in our country is just enormous, and we don't have a way to repay it, is basically what it comes back to. And so we're going to start to see a huge transformation in the educational system because of things like this. Yeah. How is it ethical that a state university puts someone through for $100K for a piece of paper and then it's unusable? Well, and then they're just relegated to a $15 or $17 an hour job for the rest of their life. Like the system's broken, and it's a huge passion I have. Yeah. And one that you speak directly to.
Yeah. So and I don't think, you know, a lot of people might not agree with me here, but that paper does not hold the same weight that it used to.
And that's the thing. So 30 years ago, it did. Yeah. Present day, it doesn't.
No.
When I graduated college it's been 15 years ago now. Right. Yeah, even that. Same thing.
And so everyone wants experience, right? They harp on experience, which is great, but you shouldn't be penalized either way. Whether you want to go to college and you have to spend all that money to get that piece of paper like you're talking about, or you don't want to go to college, great. But there should be also opportunities for you to be able to learn what you want to do, like if it's a trade, right? Because there's not really any trades, you know, there's not many trade schools.
Right. Oh, no. So, we need tradespeople.
Right, exactly. So it's one of those weird things, in my opinion, that it's equally discouraging for both sides, no matter what you want to do. Yep. Because you either have a financial burden or you don't have opportunities, and a lot of people that I know never maybe went to college, but they're way smarter than some of the people that did go to college because their entire life they were doing things, you know, they were called street smarts, book smarts, right? Just because you learn something in a book on how to sell you this coffee doesn't mean that that's the right way to do it, because you and I have a relationship. Yep. You know, and
it's a fascinating conversation. We're going to see a huge change in how things work, which I'm excited to see, because I don't think it's fair that kids like you and me get out of school with the debt that we have. And it was my choice. I'm not laying blame on anyone. While at the same time, there's got to be some better ways to do it.
So. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be something. You know, or at least opportunities. You know. I get it. You want experience.
Of course.
But let's build a program where someone could get experience, you know?
So they have what's called ISAs, income sharing agreements. So there's a school called Lambda School. This is just a good example. They are a school that teaches you how to code, right? Yeah. So you go to them for free. It's free. They give you the full education, and then you simply sign a contract that for the next X amount of years, and if you make over, I'm not sure the numbers, but if you make more than $50,000 every year, you pay them back a certain amount until you then pay like your full $50,000 in tuition that it costs, right? Right. So the school is, in a sense, front-loading a huge cost and burden, but it allows people like you and me to go get an education, and they actually spend almost 50% of their time on placing people,
Yeah,
which is
that's
laughable because if you go to any college, you go over to the career services center, there's like one person in there, right?
I know.
And for how big the school is. So some really interesting things coming about in the future of ways that they can actually provide value. The school, Lambda School, is going to make a little income or a little interest on kind of what they charge.
Absolutely.
And the student's going to get not only a good education, but they're also going to get placed.
Right.
So anyways, I love this. This is fascinating stuff.
No, it's crazy. It's crazy to see how it's evolved.
Yes,
and,
evolution. Great way to
from
put
when
it.
I was in college and even to now. But it's funny, no matter how much it evolves, right now, everyone's still in the same spot. Yeah. The kids graduating now are in the same spot that you and I were in, and they're facing the same dilemmas, even though it's evolved.
I know.
It's insane.
Yeah. So when do you remember the day when you're like, dude, I can't do this flight thing anymore?
So yeah, I remember I was on my check ride for my instrument rating, and I hadn't passed one of my requirements, one of my maneuvers. So I had to go back and redo it. But when you do it for flight, especially at an accredited school like Embry Riddle, you have to redo the whole sequence. So for my instrument rating, there was an oral exam, and then there was a simulator exam, and then there was a flight exam. And you had to pass all three of those in order to get your license. So once you passed one, you didn't have to go back. But if you failed on one, then you had to go back and redo that. And I remember going in to pay. At a flight school, you basically just have when you get your student loans, you just have a big account that just sits there. And then the school charges that account every single time. And I remember going in and there was no money.
Okay.
So it was, one of those situations.
Yeah.
And it's, again, I can't, at the time when I was there, it was an extra $20,000 a year on top of your tuition per flight rating.
Okay.
And that $20,000 only got you if you passed everything first try. So you had to be flawless.
Yep.
And anyone that has even been interested or looked at flight, I'll be honest, it's not very difficult when you get in the air. And it's I've always been very good at practical things, doing stuff with my hands. I've never been great at the book side of stuff. And the amount of information that talk about a driver's test on steroids.
Oh, it's exponentially more challenging.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
So that was the hardest part for me, was doing that stuff. And I got through my private pilot perfectly fine. I think the other hard part was, it's like anything in life, the more you do it, it just becomes second nature. And I did my private pilot's license. I actually stayed one summer, and I did it during the summer. I didn't go back home. And what was great about that is there was maybe 20 students that did that compared to the group of students that were trying to get in. And Embry Riddle's great with how many airplanes they have and stuff. But during the school year, you could imagine hundreds of students. The scheduling, right? So you may only fly once a week during the school year.
And in the summer,
I was doing 3 lessons a day.
Yeah.
And it only took me 2 months to get my private pilot's license, where, it took me a full school year, full 2 semesters to get to where I was on the other side. So, it was really interesting. It was super beneficial to get it in the summertime.
Makes sense.
But yeah, it's difficult, but like anything, if it's something that you want to do, you'll get it done.
Absolutely. I agree.
It's not that difficult if you put a little time in and figure it out. You know, it's really not. So
yeah. when I went to ASU, I went to the East Campus, called the Polytechnic Campus, and there was a flight school out there. Mm-hmm. And so there was a golf school for both the maintenance side and the kind of the pro shop side of things, and that's what I did. And there was also a flight school out there. So I had a bunch of friends who were golfers and pilots. And so they were totally going through what you went through in college, and it was so much fun to, like I'd see them the next day, and they just went for a night flight somewhere, and it was just really fun to experience vicariously through them their flight school stuff, and it was fascinating.
I mean, there's just a certain freedom to just being in the. I remember the first time I ever soloed, and I was in the plane by myself, and I was scared to death.
Heck yeah.
And I just had to remind myself, like, you know what you're doing. Yeah. They wouldn't have let you do this if you didn't. Mm-hmm. But it was still scary. But once you got over that and you got more comfortable and did it more, I mean, just the freedom and, like you said, being able to see things from the air. I mean, it's just such a different view and different perspective on what you're looking at, So it's unbelievable. I miss it for sure.
I want an airplane.
It's so fun.
I don't want to be rich, but I do want some money. I'd love an airplane.
Yeah. So
I can travel, experience more things. Like, that's it.
Yeah. Or
there's just something about it.
Right. The freedom of being up there and then the freedom to go anywhere.
Right.
At
the drop of a hat.
Yeah. My parents came out when I was in college and visited me for Easter.
Okay.
And they had only been in Prescott. Like, because they helped me move out here to go to college. So they had never seen anything else. So I rented a plane and we flew over to Havasu.
Right.
Got brunch and then we flew back.
I love it.
Yeah, it was just like a nice day and we just got to hang out.
Just like you would be a little road trip,
Right.
But
exactly. But it took half the time.
Exactly.
And we got to, they got to see everything from the air, which was super awesome.
Man.
Because that ride out to Havasu can be pretty boring sometimes.
Okay. The drive or the flight?
The drive out. Yeah. I feel like, it's a lot of desert.
Yeah.
I feel like people don't really realize that, like, that aren't from Arizona. It's beautiful to look at, but you do that
but
ride
after 5 hours,
times,
it's,
you're like, it's the same
good.
mountain.
You're good.
Yeah. Same, cactus.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen it.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on. What year did you graduate college? You've got your
2013.
Okay. With a degree in?
I actually did not graduate.
Oh, okay.
So I had to step out. We had some family stuff that I had to go help with back on the East Coast, and that's kind of when the money went dry as well. So kind of that same time. So didn't graduate, unfortunately. I was in my senior year.
Wow.
I have
You're almost
20 credits left.
Yeah, okay.
So maybe one of these days I'll go back, finish. We'll see.
Yeah.
So, 2013 that would have been. Yeah, because I went 2009 was my first year in Arizona.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's been a while.
So then after the East Coast, you take care of family stuff.
Yep, and ended up moving back to Arizona. I had a business background.
Yeah, totally.
So I needed a job when I was out here. And in college, I used to be a bouncer at Lyzards.
Uh-huh.
And I did that just to make extra money on the weekends. And I called the owner to see, just because I needed a job for the time being. And he was actually looking for a general manager.
Okay.
So I managed Lyzards for 4 years.
Wow.
3 years. I was the general manager.
I had no idea.
General manager, and I came in and did for people that have been there. I did the whole draft system.
Okay.
The draft beer system. I actually in college when I switched my majors. I had to do for an accounting class.
You started drinking more after you started flying?
Yeah.
Flew less? No.
I don't know. But when I switched them for my accounting class, I needed an internship to pass. And my internship was actually at Lyzards in college. And I went through all of the books.
Okay.
I did everything.
That's a great experience.
Yeah. So I ran all the payroll. I mean, just everything. And one of the things the owner was interested in was, because part of the internship, I had to do a cost analysis on a major improvement that the bar wanted to make.
Yeah.
And one of them was the draft beer system.
Okay.
So actually in college, I had developed this plan and cost analysis on what he had in there before and what he wanted to get. And it was really cool to implement that when I finally came back.
Yeah, most people make that plan in college, and it just obviously collects dust.
Yeah.
You never actually get to do anything.
So it was like 3 years after my internship, I got to implement that. The owner was still really wanted to do it. He was concerned because at the time he didn't have a manager.
Okay.
And the owner,
he was running the place pretty much.
Yep. He was just doing it on his own, and he was retired. So this was kind of like he always called it his man cave.
Okay.
His wife wouldn't let him do anything at the house.
That's quite a man cave.
So he got a bar and had his own man cave. Yeah. So I got to do that, which was really cool. And then, by the end of it, it was good for him because he was able to just come in whenever he wanted and do whatever. So I managed every aspect of it and got to do that. That was
a really good experience.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I've taken that experience and with my wife's salon, her needing like a POS system and stuff like that. And I was able to help her with some of that stuff and kind of teach her and also help her not make the same mistakes I did.
Right. Absolutely.
Which was beneficial. I definitely think it helped her get off the ground smoother.
Absolutely.
Because I had already made a lot of mistakes. I still have a bunch to make, but I had made some. So did that, and then in the summer times, and I was working at the bar, I also worked for FOSCHEC, which is the company that supplies the retardant for the fire airplanes for the Forest Service. So they're contracted, and I worked at the Prescott Air Tanker Base right at the airport. And I would load the planes with the retardant, and I did that for 3 summers. Just kind of as a fun second job. And
I mean, in a sense, the bar's closed. Like, you can kind of maybe do that
during the day. I scheduled my stuff very early at the bar, so like deliveries and stuff. And then I could get to the tanker base
for a number of hours.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it was pretty self-sufficient. Not that it wasn't before, but we had just...
It was a lot more...
Yeah, me and the owner were able to put things in place that made our jobs a lot easier.
That's huge.
Yeah, so it made it, I maybe had to be there for 2 hours a day. I was there longer.
Which, by the way, just for any business owner, that's why you put up some of these upfront costs. That's why you front load certain things simply to take time and resources off the future.
Yeah, I mean, everything was automated, through our POS system because I installed a new POS system at the bar. And, I mean, that thing ran our payroll.
That means point of sale for the people or like they have no clue what in the world. Like when you go check out.
I'm not talking about the swear word.
Right.
It's point of sale.
Checking out.
Right. And we found a great company on a whim. One of our registers went down 5 days before 4th of July one year. And we had to redo our entire system. And it was crazy. But, yeah, I mean, everything was automated and it was great. So it paid our taxes, our payroll taxes. It paid our TPT taxes. Everything automatically for us.
Software is amazing.
It was insane. And I'm not sponsored by them, but we use Square.
Yeah.
And if for people that have used Square, we use Square to build my wife's website for her salon, and it was free.
They're just killing it.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of money that it costs to get all of these things for a business, It's amazing how much cheaper that is, and just with a little effort.
Yeah.
And for the business owner, how much better you will understand your numbers.
Oh.
Because you're the one that did it, and they're so easy to access. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's awesome.
So, yeah, I did that and worked at the tanker base for 3 years.
Okay.
And that's kind of where I fell in love with fire.
Okay.
Was working there. So
every boy loves fire.
Yeah. I mean, the pyro in every kid.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So did that. In my last year, I got red carded through that company.
Okay.
And a red card is basically your qualification card to be on a fire.
Okay.
So it has all of your qualifications as a firefighter, and it basically you have to take a class. It's basically like a refresher class.
Okay.
Every year you have to do it, and it's getting into a fire shelter, knowing your standard firefighting orders, and then watch out situations. We call them the 10s and 18s.
Okay.
So we had to do that, and then there was a Pac Test, they call it, and it's considered arduous. So every year, every firefighter has to do this, and it's 3 miles in 45 minutes with 45 pounds.
Okay.
But you can't run.
Okay.
So you have to walk. So I was able to get red carded, and I got called to go to a portable, or they call it a mobile retardant base.
All right.
And it was in Oregon. So I got a phone call one day, and they said, yeah, we need some people. And because I was carded, I could go to this fire. And I called my wife. She was my fiance at the time. And, we were just dating at the time, maybe. And I said, hey, I got a call to go. I don't know when I'm leaving. They're going to call me back, and I don't know how long I'm going to be gone for. And 2 hours later, I called her, and I said, I'm driving to California, like as we speak.
Yeah.
And I'll stay in touch.
Right. I don't know the future.
Yeah. I mean, and
future.
Usually when you do that, it's 14 days, usually.
Okay.
It can be as much as 21.
Okay.
And as I found out this season, I was actually gone for 31 days.
All right.
So I can't say enough good things. She's been great about dealing with this, because it's not easy because it just changes so much. But I went out there. It was about 45 minutes north of Medford, Oregon.
Okay.
And we got out there, and they said, well, you guys need to go buy tents. You're going to be sleeping on site. Usually you sleep at fire camp.
Okay.
But our base was kind of further away.
Yeah.
So we would drive into fire camp for dinner at night. And then they had people that would bring out lunch.
Okay.
We got a rental car, and me and one of the other guys that work for the company, and I was gone for 21 days the first time.
Yep.
And I came back, and I told her, I was like, this is what I want to do.
Okay.
And that was kind of like my turning point for me. I knew it was going to be difficult being away from home and kind of, bumming it.
Absolutely.
No showers, no, you have access to showers.
The normal way of living is not what happens.
Yeah, exactly. So I just fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And the following fire season, I applied for the Forest Service here on the Prescott, and was fortunate enough to get a job.
Okay.
So that's kind of where it all started for me, was really getting certified to be able to go out.
Yep.
And then being able to go out and really experiencing that was amazing, life-changing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Man, I bet. How long did you do it? And what was your title? What would you have?
So
if someone asked you what do you do, Adam? What would you have told them?
So right right now or back then?
Yeah, back then.
So back then I was just considered a loader.
Okay.
So at the mobile base, they basically have about the size of this room, believe it or not, and probably about as tall as this room. So what is this?
11 by 14?
Yeah. Metal containers. Okay. And then we would take powdered retardant, and we were next to a river, so we had to pump water up, and you mix the water and the retardant, and then we would shoot it into a container about the size of this room, and then the helicopters would fly in, pick it up.
Container, okay.
Yep. Because there wasn't an airport close by, and also the helicopters, when they fill up, they don't land. Right? They're moving.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, whereas like the airplanes, the big air tankers,
and they load.
And then they come and land, and then they have to get manually filled up, where the helicopters have a bucket. Okay. So we were really out there for the helicopters on this one, whereas when I worked at the airport, we were there for the planes.
Makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So
just depends on the location.
Exactly. Right. And there was a base of ours that was at Medford Airport. So the big airplanes were loading out of Medford, and then the helicopters, they could do shorter turnarounds and get back quicker. Yep. So we were set up about a mile away from the fire. So they would just come in, pick up, go out, come all day. Yeah, and our job at that time was to just make sure it was filled. Okay. So we had a water one and then one that had retardant in it. And that was our job all day. We just kept mixing batches and making sure it was full.
Yeah. How many helicopters would be going at a time? Just one?
No, I think we had about 5 on our busiest day.
Wow. I mean, it's nonstop, I assume. Yeah. Do 18-wheeler big tankers bring in this retardant? And like, how does all that...
So, yeah, the 18...
I'm curious about this distribution.
Yeah. So they have powdered form and they have liquid form. Okay. So at the Prescott Tanker Base, when I left, I don't know about now, but I'm pretty sure it's still liquid. It was liquid. So, yeah, they had 18-wheelers come in, and they would load the concentrate.
Yes.
Okay, and then you'd mix it with water, and there's a special process to that that basically like the managers learn, because it's very important to get the concentrate right.
Right.
If it's not right, it's not going to be effective.
2 to 1 or whatever that number.
Exactly. I think, again, if I remember right, I think it was a 5 to 1. Okay. So 5 parts water to 1 part. So whatever we got in for liquid, we could make 5 times that amount. Yeah. And our busiest day at that airport, we did 150,000 gallons of retardant in one day. And that drained us. Okay. We were completely empty, and that was on the Goodwin fire. Okay. Which a lot of people would probably remember. It was...
I wasn't living up here then.
So it was that was the one that jumped 89. Dewey was evacuated. Humboldt was evacuated. It was it was big. And we had 8 planes. Whoa. Yeah. And we, at the Prescott base, we're really fortunate. And not a lot of people might know this. But the way that base was built, you can actually simultaneously load 2 planes at a time. Okay.
You're saying Prescott base, you mean the Prescott Airport, the tanker base?
Okay. So the tanker base is out at the airport. Right. It's a federal building. If you've ever been down by where Embry Riddle's buildings are, it's right down that way. So it's on that side of the airport. And we have 3 pits where the planes can come in, and then you can load 2 at a time. Okay. And we were at a point, like, during that, I mean, those planes would land as soon as their wheels touched the pavement. Within 10 minutes, their wheels were off the ground again, going back to the fire. And one of the planes that day did 15 loads. So 15 trips, and might not seem like a lot, but when you have 7, 8 planes doing that, and for that crew, that was the most flights they had ever done to that point.
Makes sense.
In one day. So it was crazy.
Intense.
And on the mobile side of things, we had huge they were on a pallet, and they were these bags that were powder. So same thing, you mix the powder with the water, and you get it mixed up, and those pallets would come off 18-wheelers. Okay. So they would 18-wheel them in. Yeah. They'd have a forklift and take the pallets off, and then we would, work them from there.
Jeez Louise. What's that stuff made of?
I don't know exactly what it's made of. I probably should. But I can tell you that the majority of it is salt.
Okay.
So that really helps. But it's crazy how it works because they have the red stuff or the pink stuff, which most people see on the news.
That's what I picture in my brain.
Okay. And then they have a gel, which is blue. Okay. There's another company that makes like a gel. The gel can be more effective and less effective depending on how it's being applied.
Okay.
So the retardant is really good, especially after it's, first applied. And really like anything, it's how it's applied and how much is applied. Because in the planes or the helicopters, they can actually adjust. It's called the coverage level. Okay. How much is coming out. Yeah. So they really fine-tune that stuff.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it what it's doing is it's not what I have found is it's not an end-all be-all, which I think could be a misconception. What it allows is for the crews on the ground enough time to get in there and then support that retardant by putting in a physical hand line. Yeah. Okay. So it's really funny in fire, especially on a big fire. You can't have one or the other. You got to have both. Is what I think is the most effective and what I've seen is the most effective and how they fight it. So if you only have hand line, that is good on some smaller fires or something like that. But if you have something that's raging, to have the support of both. Yeah. They usually put the retardant in and then in between the fire, and then in between the fire and the retardant is where you'd put the hand line in. So it's even, it's redundancy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it really helps, and I got to obviously learn a lot, and then I was around planes, so that was cool. Yeah. And it was just a fun experience working there. And
absolutely.
Then, yeah, of course, made me want to take the next step.
Yeah. And what an interesting way to weave all your interests together.
Yeah. It's
obviously maybe at the time you weren't necessarily interested in forest fires per se, but it just sort of allowed it for itself. That happens a lot in life, actually, where we do something not necessarily not knowing until we look back in life what came next and we become interested in this. Like, right. I would have never been sitting here. This is a great example. 2.5 years ago, this would have scared the you-know-what out of me. But I started doing videos for real estate, and I just started realizing I kind of like it. Yeah. And then it turned into this, and now I like it. And I have no idea what's next. So it's kind of one of those things. All of a sudden, you're in the fire business.
Well, yeah, and like I said, being from the East Coast, even when I was out here for school, like I knew fires were happening, but it still was so far off my radar. Yeah. And then I did a job like that, loading the planes, and got to see how
up close and personal,
and prevalent it is. I mean, I wasn't on the fire line when I was doing that, but just to see all the planes come in and the times when they had to shut down the airport and it was only fire, like crazy. And then it makes me wish in some senses that I would have known about it when I was younger.
Of course,
because I would have. It's just I would have jumped on this like no one's business. I know. It would have been so fun to do. Yep. But I'm glad I found it, and I'm there now. So that's all that matters, really.
Yeah. So you're still doing some of that? What? Explain to the people. You can kind of weave that in now to the off season, the on season.
So I applied for the Forest Service after that trip. Like I said, I was lucky enough to get hired on. So I currently work for the Prescott National Forest.
Okay.
As a wildland firefighter. My past 2 seasons, I was with Crew 2,
okay,
which is a fuels crew. And we're based out of Chino.
Okay.
And we are a hand crew. So
yeah, explain to us people.
Yeah, I want to be very careful how I say this because so we are not a hotshot crew.
Okay.
But we do similar types of work that the hotshots do.
Okay.
And I want to be careful because we're not hotshots, okay?
But there's a little overlap in the sense of some
yeah,
duties
exactly, because a hotshot crew is a hand crew, right?
Okay.
And basically what a hand crew is we use our hands to do our job.
Okay.
So we use chainsaws, we use hand tools, and we physically go into a fire and put what's called either direct line or indirect line in. So indirect would obviously be further away from the fire, and then direct would be right on the fire's edge.
Okay.
So there's usually 1 to 2 chainsaw teams, which is made up of 2 guys, one guy on the chainsaw and then one guy we call a swamper.
Okay.
And the swamper basically picks up the cut stuff.
Gotcha.
Okay. And they go ahead and they basically cut a path, and then the rest of the guys come behind them and they're digging the line where the cut is. So they're getting rid of all the brush. Yeah. What our crew specialized in, what I mean by a fuels crew, is we were our main priority besides fire was also doing project work on the forest.
Okay.
So we were responsible for everyone's responsible for this on the forest. Everyone helps out. But our main focus was getting burn blocks ready.
Okay.
So when we do prescribed burns, so we would go out and do that. And fuel mitigation, basically. And making sure that everything was set up and ready for when the forest wanted to do burns.
Okay.
And then our crew actually started a little bit later than everyone else, and we ended later.
Okay.
So we started May, and then we'd get off in November.
All right.
Where most of the crews on our forest start, like this year, I'm starting March 28th.
Oh, yeah. So a month or two earlier.
But in those September, October, November time frames, hopefully if we get monsoons, that's when we would do a lot of the burning. So that's why we were stayed on longer.
Yep.
So what I got from that and working on that crew is really what I'm taking to people, right? Yes. Our crew specialized in burning and fuel mitigation. Okay. And that's what I'm trying to take into people with Fuel Break is my knowledge from that and really fuel mitigation and fuel reduction around their house.
Yeah.
As you were talking about the aviation side and kind of how that ties in. So this year I'll be on the helicopter for our forest, and I will basically be on the helicopter crew. Okay. So we, instead of having trucks, I mean, they have trucks, obviously, but our main mode of transportation would be the helicopter, and that's our tool, right? Naturally. Instead of, we still use chainsaws and hand tools, but our tool is making sure the helicopter's ready and, the bucket is set up and things like that. And then obviously we get to fly out, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
A little bit easier on the body than hiking in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, but yeah, to tie into the Fuel Break stuff is really, taking what I've learned from these fuel mitigations from, the great supervisors that I had and just really trying to share that knowledge and also to give me something to do in the off season. Yeah. So people may or may not know, but you're basically on for 6 months, off for 6 months. Okay. And the 6 months you're off, you're not getting paid. Yep. You're actually considered laid off.
Makes
so
sense.
You get laid off. You're considered a seasonal employee. I'm hoping within the next couple of years I can get a permanent spot. But I needed something to do. And for me, it was great because I can stay in shape and do the same type of work that I do out there. You know, my goal is always, once I'm in shape for season, is to stay in shape and not digress. So to do that, and then to just help people. Because what I've found, and I'm not saying that this is everyone, but I feel like I was very... You hear a lot of things about fuel mitigation, but I feel like I was very naive on what can be considered fuel mitigation. I feel like there's some people that have the perspective that everything needs to go when it's not the case. And then I feel like there's some people that are the opposite of the spectrum and don't want a lot gone, but their property might need more. You know, it's very situational dependent. And these are all things that I learned by doing. Yeah. You know, I had 3 years ago, I had no idea. No idea. And I don't claim to be an expert, but what I do try to bring to the table is honesty and, you know, make it work for what the client wants. And kind of come up with a happy medium. Because I'll be honest, some is better than none. So even if it's a little bit, right, it's still going to help. Yeah. I mean, the whole, in my opinion, the whole theory of firewising your property is making an area that allows the forest firefighters to go in and protect your property. Gotcha. You know,
because if they don't have a place to get into, then
imagine a neighborhood that has a ton, everyone sees it, a ton of brush all over the place, okay? And the fire is coming to that neighborhood. You now have 20 houses that you have to prep for this fire. And if one house is already done, the amount of time that takes to get, in the manpower to get it done quickly. Right? It's very beneficial to have that done. And
that's an understatement. Yeah. It's paramount to homes and lives.
Absolutely. And it makes... This might sound bad, but it makes our job easier. Not that we're looking to have our job easier, but what it allows us to do is, if we had to put out a hose behind your house to prevent something, if we have to first go in and cut, and could you imagine like the amount of time for that, and then to put the hose out and then stand? But if it's done, and all that has to be done is the hose has to be out. Imagine how much quicker that can get done, and God forbid the work doesn't get done, and like if we have to do the work, and then it's too late.
Yeah. Well, then it just spirals to someone else's house. I mean, you know, it's not to make your work easier. It's simply to make this whole thing work as optimal as possible, which is saving as many houses and as many lives as possible.
Absolutely. So there's definitely an aspect of that as well. So
I think it's fascinating that you come from the angle that you do. That you're not just and there's nothing wrong with just a landscaper who does FireWise. It just so happens your experience is on the front lines and is really, really unique to what you do. I mean, you can literally sit in front of a client and go, I've been there. Like, if this happens or that happens, then this is how we would need to do stuff, and this is where we would want stuff cleared. I mean, it is like, what else could you want?
Yeah, I definitely try to bring some of that mentality to it. You know, I think a big... Again, I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about firewising a property. And once you go in and talk to the client about it and really kind of see what they want, you know, there's a lot of homes in Prescott, for example, that people think that they want FireWise, but it's in the middle of town.
Gotcha.
And, you know, I wouldn't consider that firewising at this time because...
Yeah, you can use a different word.
Right, because as I tell them, it's like this is more of a visual. You want it to look a little bit nicer, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, you know, we're not
talking apples and oranges.
Exactly, because the likelihood of something getting to your house, I mean, could
it's
you
much
imagine
lower
how
on the probability?
catastrophic?
Oh, the whole town's going if your house is going.
Right. So whatever I do is not going to be beneficial at that
right.
point. You know what I'm saying? But also little things that, you know, in Prescott especially, our winds are always out of the southwest.
Okay.
Always.
Interesting.
In the summertime,
I don't think I knew that.
They're always out of the southwest.
Okay.
But I would say 95% of the days it's southwest or southwest. And then every once in a while we get a little bit of a northeast or northwest
So
wind.
that means they are coming from the southwest?
Correct.
Okay. So in that case, they're ripping over a bunch of pine trees right down Copper Basin and...
Theoretically,
I mean,
right?
I could.
So if something started that way, theoretically. But what I try to tell customers is, you know, let's see where your house is setting. Let's see where southwest is, because the most work should be done on the southwest side.
Makes sense.
You know, and I feel like I've talked to people that have had other companies do firewising, and they want to do the entire property.
Of course.
And they want a we call it a swath.
Yeah.
They want a huge piece, and it's a lot more work.
Yep.
Which is fine, but is it necessary?
Is it necessary?
Right.
Yeah.
You could spend more money buffering the southwest side of your property and then doing light trimmings on the other sides of your property, because that's most likely where it's coming from.
And I think back to what you said, and I think this is so important for business owners to get across. What you do, Adam, it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to your customers. So you want to let them know, for example, that stuff most likely will come from the southwest.
Yeah.
This is a good area that we can clean up. If there's other stuff you want us to do, that's fine. But I get really annoyed when a business owner comes in and, in a sense, wants to do everything on the table when the customer's like, dude, we just need a little FireWise, right?
Right.
Kind of just think, I don't know. I get really stuck on trying to get everything you can versus, hey, well, how about just a southwest cleanup?
Right. Well,
whatever.
It's like that. I feel like it's like why mechanics get a bad rap.
I could not agree more.
Right? It's like that that thing where they like, all of a sudden they found this and this needs to be fixed.
And the customer doesn't know. And I think this is really important.
Yeah.
Customers just don't know. So you can take advantage, which is...
Exactly. I mean, and that's my goal is I'm not trying to make a killing here.
Yeah.
I'm
on
not.
our phone call before the podcast, this is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
It's not your interest. It's not who you are.
Right. I'm not here to make $1 million or anything like that. I'm here to support my family in the off season and to use my knowledge, which I was ignorant to. And if people have questions, be, willing and open and just say, hey, if we showed up, this is how I usually talk to customers. If I was with my crew right now and this was a fire and we showed up, this is how we would attack this. And this is what we would do. And this is how we would make this safe. Safe doesn't always mean that it's going to be 100%
effective.
Okay.
Or,
right. A lot of factors go into
You'd be
fires.
naive to think.
Correct.
You'd be a narcissist to say.
Right.
Otherwise.
But it will make it safer and it will give you a better chance of making sure that your property or your house is protected.
Yep.
So that's really what I'm trying to do is because I've learned so much. And again, I'm not from this area.
Right.
So it was new information to me. And what I am finding is people are very aware of firewising and they are very, they have basics down. Okay. Most people know around this area. But I find that people still have questions about it. And I also feel that most people are surprised with, believe it or not, how little is required. Like I think that people have this perception that FireWise is like everything's gone, completely clear, nothing around.
Which, from a 30,000-foot view, makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you've been on your side of the work, you know that that's not the case.
Yeah.
It may be sometimes, but on the whole...
Yeah, again, I mean, it's all weather dependent, but, I mean, you would be surprised some of the larger fires, like, that I've been fortunate enough to be on and experience, how little, you know, a 2-foot, we call it a 2-foot scrape, which would be our hand line, how that little bare piece of dirt could stop a fire, even in some pretty windy conditions, you know, because the wind is what would carry the embers over that. But just having that reduction. And again, it doesn't have to be everything, you know. Having some stuff on the ground can actually be beneficial because the intensity of the fire slows down.
Gotcha.
So I was on a burn in Flagstaff last year or 2 years ago, and we were doing a prescribed burn, and they have a bunch of needle cast on the ground, and the fire moves rapidly through the needle cast, but the needle cast is so small and thin, it's rapid, but it cools down quick.
Gotcha.
And it burns so quickly that it just, you know, and think about the pine trees up there, it just slowly creeps along it.
Okay.
You know, or I've been to customers' houses where they have like amazing rocks and dirt in between their bushes.
Okay.
So, you know, in a situation like that, fire's not moving on rocks and dirt.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, usually it starts on the ground and the wind will push it, obviously. Okay. So getting rid of some of those fuels is great, but having rocks or dirt or limbing trees up, you know, we call those ladder fuels.
Okay.
So, you know, it's going to climb it just like a ladder up the tree, and that's when the tree would get on fire.
Yep.
And if you can even just bring your tree up, you know, it's recommended 6 foot.
Okay.
But even 4 foot.
Yeah.
You know, if you want a little more fullness, that is still being proactive about something, and it's still going to be better for you. Yep. You know, so that's kind of that happy medium of like, no, you really like this tree on your property?
Great.
Here's what we can do. You know?
Well, we can still do 1 or 2 small things and
exactly, and really help it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting, and it's nice to just
fascinating.
Just kind of talk to people about it, and like I said, my main goal is to make the person's property safer, along with, you know, because some people buy houses in wooded areas and they bought it for the woods.
Of course.
So there's a way to have both, I guess is where I'm trying to go with this.
Well said.
That's the way I try to approach it, is you can have both, and these really don't have to, it's not as drastic.
It's not
as it
binary.
Has to be.
There's gray.
Correct.
In the middle.
Absolutely. And again, it's all situational dependent on the customer wants, needs. I've had some where it has been a clear cut of everything, but that's what that customer wanted, you know? So, sense. It's pretty interesting stuff.
What's the most frequently asked question you get?
It's usually, most of the time people have like a favorite tree or a favorite bush on their property. And it's kind of a, can we save this? Or does this have to go? It's one of those. And if it's done right, usually it never has to go.
I was going to say.
You know, unless... my only recommendation to people, and this isn't even just for fire, this is for, you know, we get winds, we do get snow, heavy snow, is if a tree's dead or rotting. You know, then I try to get them to maybe let's get rid of this, especially if it's close to the house.
Moving into becoming a fuel source at some point in time.
Yeah, well, fuel source for sure for a fire. I get a lot of business when it snows too, because trees break, branches break.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I can go out and clean those up for people, and just the weight of them. So just the integrity of the tree itself. So I get that asked a lot, and then a lot of like species questions.
Yeah.
Like,
do you know much about that kind of stuff?
I'm learning.
Good. No, good.
I'm learning. I definitely know the basics for sure, and just because it's something that we look at in the Forest Service, again, when we do prescribed burns, we're not just throwing fire on the ground and just right? Like,
of course not.
There is like, hey, we know that we're going into this patch of juniper, and based on the conditions today, this juniper is really going to go. So we're going to naturally put less fire down.
Gotcha.
To decrease the intensity. So, things like that is definitely where I know, obviously, some of that type of stuff. But yeah,
you're learning.
Yeah, again, learning. And every year, I feel like it only makes my business stronger because I'm in new and different positions every year.
That's awesome.
Right. I mean, I'm in different states dealing with fires. I'm in everywhere in different weather conditions and all of that type of stuff. And that only helps. Every year I come back with more knowledge in the off season.
It adds to your repertoire.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen more. And again, it doesn't make me an expert on it. But what it does is it gives me enough knowledge to be like, hey, like you said, I've been in this situation. Yeah. I've seen what can happen. And that might be the worst case scenario. But it allows me to say, well, if that worst case scenario happens here, this is what, maybe we should buffer this a little bit more, and it's just going to give you that little bit extra where you can feel a little bit safer.
That's it.
And not have to worry about it. So
that is it. Yeah, the peace of mind that can come with FireWising a property.
Absolutely.
Enormous. Yeah. And hopefully it does its job at the same time, which, as we've shared, there are so many factors that you do what you can.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a ton of factors that happen. But again, I'm trying to think of what I could compare it to. But, it's very proactive. You haven't done nothing, and at least you gave yourself a chance.
Yeah.
You gave yourself a better chance than what most people would have.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's all you can do, because it's a natural disaster. It's Mother Nature doing what it wants to do.
Yep.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
I mean, even for us, there is times where we have to step back and take a deep breath.
Let it move its course for 30
figure
minutes,
out a different
30 hours,
plan.
whatever it kind of...
Exactly. I mean, it's just, there is no right or wrong way of... There is a right and a wrong way, but there's not like a black and white.
It doesn't happen like this every time.
Exactly.
It actually happens different every time, and you just have to learn to pivot and...
Yeah.
And
be flexible.
Man. So I had a gentleman named Paul on the podcast a couple weeks ago. He builds guitars. And so he brought out one of his guitars that he built, and it's just this work of art, right? So I listened to him talk about all these guitar things that I know nothing about, but it's just fascinating, right? And hearing you and most of my guests who just sit across and speak from their experience and their knowledge set on forest fires, whatever it is. Yeah. I love it. I think it's fascinating. I know it's one of just my passions is learning people's story and in a long format, allowing your story to develop. Yeah. That I think people can listen to and watch and go, man, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. And he's not. Anyways, they get a really good sense for who you are. I love it.
Yeah. No, it's, I feel very fortunate to be able to share it. And I've had some phenomenal mentors.
I bet. Some OGs.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough, and I'm not saying this to be biased, but we are very fortunate to live in and around the Prescott because and when I say Prescott National Forest, because I am amazed, and I have seen this when I've traveled to other forests. I'm amazed at how proactive our forest is with mitigation, with prescribed fires, and it's really nice. Like, not that other forests aren't as proactive,
right? But
there's a big problem in California. They always have these mega fires, and some of the research that I've done, people have voted against mitigation because they didn't want to see that. They bought the house in Tahoe with amazing views, right? But when something catastrophic happens, there's nothing there to help.
Right.
And it can be a nuisance. It can be a pain. There's smoke in the air.
Yeah.
It can be a nightmare for people for sure. And I totally get that. But the benefits of treating our forest, even if it isn't a large fuel break, but just a prescribed fire and treating it, from my perspective, being an employee, I couldn't be prouder of being able to work
to hear.
For it, because it's amazing. They, from what I see, they're really buckling down and trying to make it as safe as possible. So it's really nice for sure.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Man, cool. We do have such an amazing area.
I mean,
so it's really good to hear that, they're working on it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, like I said, my last crew, that's all we did. That was our focus, was focusing on making these things happen. And as long as the weather conditions were proper, we could go out and do those prescribed burns and make it happen and at least treat some portion of the forest. Because even a treated piece is still super beneficial, because if a new fire hits a treated piece, which is already burned, even if it was burned 6 months ago, there's less stuff on the ground than there was before. And that's a really good, we look for those all the time. Is there an old burn scar that we could direct this fire into? And that would help slow it down. And that's usually our spot where we can stop it.
Makes perfect sense.
So, it's nice. It's really fun.
Awesome.
I enjoy it.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I've got some marketing ideas for you after the pod.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, because I think what you offer is really rich, especially in our area.
And all the guys, that I hire, it's really just me. I don't have any set employees.
Yeah, you get some help when you need help, I
right.
assume.
So based on the job, I will decide, if I need people. And everyone that I hire they all work for the Prescott Forest, National Forest. They all, so hopefully, to your point, that eases maybe someone's concerns about getting FireWise, because everyone is trained on a chainsaw.
You guys live and breathe this.
Right.
This is what you do.
Everyone knows what they're doing. Right. It's not just me, and I bring in more experienced people too, and hey, this is what I was thinking for this, and I was talking to the customer. Okay, maybe we should do this here or that there, and again, it's not a perfect science, but going through it and experiencing it and just being able to offer it is it's great.
Yep.
So
let's make a segue.
Yeah.
What keeps you in Greater Prescott?
Probably, well, we have a house. Michaela, my wife, has her salon in town.
Yep.
Which is it's been open like 2 years now. So we're kind of rooted here. And then the Forest Service getting the job there. Yeah. So it would be fairly easy for me to get a job elsewhere.
To transfer, in a sense.
Yeah. Kind of once you're in the system, it is definitely a little bit easier to slide around, if you will. But we've talked about a few places that might be interesting to go to. One would be Texas.
Okay.
So we've talked about it, but yeah, for the fire side of things, you know, I don't know if Texas would be the best. They definitely get fires, but it's on like the western portion too, and there's not much out there in West Texas.
There's a whole lot of nothingness.
Right,
in West
exactly.
Texas.
So, but yeah, I mean, we've definitely talked about it, but I think it's just such a nice community of people, and you know, I think it's a good mix of older, experienced people who have retired, and then younger people who are motivated and, you know, want to make something of themselves. And there's just something about Prescott that it just keeps. We used to have a joke in college that it just keeps bringing you back.
That's funny, yeah.
And people that would...
And people from Embry Riddle are not from here. They're all from everywhere.
Yeah,
in the
and
US.
people would graduate and go get a job somewhere, and then like 2 years later, they'd find a job out here.
Yeah.
And they'd be right back in Prescott.
It's that perspective thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I like the size. It's definitely getting a lot bigger since I first came out here in 2009.
Yeah.
You know, I remember going through Prescott Valley, and it looked nothing like it looks now, you know. But it's just a great size. I feel like everyone knows everyone in some extent, even if you've never met the person.
Absolutely.
You know, they probably know 3 of the people that you associate yourself with.
Totally.
So that's really nice. And it's just a good mix of, we basically get all 4 seasons.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes.
Mild 4 seasons is how I think it's a very apt way to put it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really nice about that. And yeah, I mean, it's just a cool place to be. We've got a lot of good restaurants.
We do.
So yeah.
That's a perfect segue.
Yeah.
This is the rapid fire question section.
Okay.
Answer with the first thing that comes to mind. If there's not just one, then answer 2 or 3. Doesn't matter. First question.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about Greater Prescott?
It's going to sound so cliche, but it's probably like our forest and hiking trails is super awesome. We have like such a cool infrastructure, I feel like.
It is.
And there's a ton of trails.
Tons.
Yeah. And the views from those trails are like, it's crazy how far you can see.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I like that. And I got to be honest, and people are probably going to laugh.
Hey, stop lying to us, Adam. Come on now.
But I am not a big fan of hiking, or I never was. And I've gotten to like it a little bit more. And obviously I do it to train in the off season to get ready. And I've just gotten a new appreciation of it now over the past 3 or 4 years. Cool. So yeah, so getting to experience that stuff, which when I was first out here for college, I mean, I knew nothing about the trails and the amount of stuff that there was.
Every Embry Riddle kid here. Yeah. I mean, it's just not what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
nothing wrong with that.
That's definitely probably one of my favorite things.
What's your favorite restaurant in Greater Prescott?
This is tough.
I said you can name more than one.
Okay. So if me and the wife, our probably go-to is Rosa's. I'm Italian, so I love Italian food. But I also love Mexican food. So Taco Don's is right by our house. And if you haven't been yet, the new taco and tequila bar downtown, it's in the old building of John's Chop House.
Oh, I didn't know something opened up there.
Gosh, it's so good.
Okay.
And they have like street tacos and you know, a ton of tequila. I'm not a big tequila guy, but they do, you know, they make margaritas and stuff, but it's amazing. And the tacos are very reasonably priced.
Perfect.
And it's cool because you walk in and it's like seat yourself. So they made it feel like like you're walking up to a taco shop somewhere. And yeah, the tacos are amazing. So good.
Any other restaurants?
If like I guess they're a restaurant, but one of my favorite places to get sandwiches in town is Nick's Feed Your Face. I mean, have you
talked much to Nick?
No,
the guy. So I did a real estate video with him. I really need him to have him on the podcast.
Yeah,
he is wild and amazing.
Yeah,
the dude is so cool.
I mean, if you live in Prescott and haven't experienced Nick's, you are missing out. Like,
amen.
It is. So it reminds me of like the East Coast delis.
Well, he's from Chicago, so
that's
his.
That's exactly what it reminds me of. There's not. I mean, it's the amount that you get for the price that you pay is like
off the charts.
Yeah. Yep. And then I think everyone really likes Park Plaza. Yeah. You can't go wrong. And they're always super consistent. Yep. So yeah, I mean we definitely have a few, but usually, if we want a pizza or something, we get Rosa's or we had our wedding reception at Rosa's.
Okay.
So,
nice.
Yeah. But yeah, any of those places, definitely Mexican, my favorites. It was Taco Don's. I still love Taco Don's, but now that I've tried the new...
Yes. Oh, I can't wait to go.
I don't want to butcher the name.
Okay.
It starts with a P.
Maybe I'll put the text on it in the video.
So good.
Okay.
So, yep.
All right, next question. What's the number one thing on your Greater Prescott bucket list?
Ooh. Boy. I don't know. That's a good one.
Mine is to ride in a helicopter just over the Greater Prescott area. I just want to see it. Yeah. It was back to your airplane thing.
Okay.
I just want to see. We have such diverse topography.
Yeah.
That's mine.
So I think it used to be, and I've accomplished it, was see Prescott from Granite. And I went all the way up. Like once I got to the top, I kind of not really climbed, but I kind of like walked my way up to the tippity top that you can do.
Okay.
And to see that was crazy to me. I've been fortunate enough to see it from the air.
Yep.
So, but yeah, that was an experience because it's, it's the most popular thing in Prescott, I feel like. Like, you think of Prescott, you think of Granite Mountain. Yep. So to see that, and then something else I got to do this past fire season, which was super cool and very special, was we did a PT hike into the juniper that the Prescott Granite Mountain saved. Okay. So we got to do that, which was really cool. And that was a pretty sobering moment. Yeah, to do it as a crew and So yeah, definitely Granite Mountain for sure. That was probably my biggest one.
I've heard it's really hard.
It's not terrible.
Okay.
You can do it. I mean, it takes a while for sure. But it's not. I think as long as you're prepared, just make sure you have enough water. Make sure that you have snacks if you need snacks. Okay. But it's so worth it. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. It's crazy.
I think some of the best views in town are actually out Williamson Valley, like up Rainmaker Street. There's a neighborhood. It's just in the foothills of Granite Mountain. Yeah. And it's just shocking how far you can see. Yeah. It's like well over 180-degree views. It's really unique.
Yeah.
So I can imagine Granite Mountain being just, oh, man.
Mingus is another.
Oh, yeah.
We... my first season with the Forest Service, we did a project on Mingus, and we started at the bottom and we worked our way all the way up to the top. I remember one day we sat down and had like lunch at the top, and we were right on the top, and it was crazy looking back. Like, it gave me the same experience as being up on top of Granite.
Yeah, just from a different angle.
Right.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so that was another one that was like, it looks big, it looks daunting, but you get up there, and then it's just crazy to see how small things are, and it's like, it really is that huge.
That's really cool. You've done a lot, naturally.
Yeah, I've been fortunate.
You've been fortunate.
It's part of the job. You get to do a lot of cool things and see a lot of cool things. So
good. What is your favorite all-time airplane?
P-51 Mustang.
Okay, you're an old school.
Yeah.
Is it a World War II type of plane?
Yeah, I think it was World War II. There's just something about it. Yeah. Like, it was so cool. I had a model of it. Yeah. One of my RC airplanes when I was young was one of them.
Oh, yeah.
So I just think they're like, it's just something about to imagine the technology back then, to be able to build something like that people are still flying today.
True.
But really, I could say, in a sense, every airplane, because I think one of the things that fascinated me about flying is how something that big and that heavy, the physics and the aerodynamics of how that works is just, it's still mind-blowing.
It is.
It's like, how is that possible?
Yep.
So, yeah, I'd probably say P-51, though.
What are three?
Especially to be able to have all 4 seasons and experience that much sunshine. And, I mean,
that's why people are going to keep moving here. It's just really nice.
Yeah, no, there's just a great vibe. And, mostly everyone gets along, I feel like, and it's just, everyone's very welcoming. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a really neat place to live for sure. Yep. So.
All right. If you weren't a firefighter who was once a pilot, who now has Fuel Break LLC, what kind of work would you be doing?
Military.
What? Within the military?
I don't know. Probably like a probably infantry.
You mentioned drones earlier.
Yeah. I do like drones. It's definitely something that I'm trying to get into with the Forest Service. Okay. They do use them a lot. But I figured that was more of the pilot side of things. So
gotcha.
Yeah, military. I definitely looked into it, especially when I was younger. And it was always something that interested me. I've kind of always felt like this need or want to help people.
Okay.
Or to just do something that made me feel good about like my days of work. Yeah. With the Forest Service, it is some of the hardest work I've ever done. But you get the feeling that you get when you are done for that day, the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of, hey, I didn't think I was going to be able to do that, and I did it. It's so hard to describe, and it's just a really cool environment to be in. And a lot of former military guys work for the Forest Service.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because it's that camaraderie.
Right.
It's that. So, definitely a different aspect, but just something like that. Everyone that I've met that does this job, they don't do it for recognition. They don't do it for. They do it because they want to help out. And to be honest, it's so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the most fun ever, and they're not looking to get credit for it. They just look at it like a normal job, and they just want to help out. And this is a fun, cool way to do it. And the things that you get to experience doing it and traveling and, that's priceless.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. I mean, to be able to do that as a job and go explore everywhere and see amazing places is like, this past year I was sitting on top of a huge ridge line on a fire in Idaho.
Okay.
And I had never been to Idaho. And I mean, the view was...
Oh, I hear it's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I was like, I'm getting paid to do this. Like, there's something wrong with this because, I mean, it's just amazing. So...
Yeah.
I feel like the military would be very similar to having some of those feelings of it.
Makes perfect sense.
So that's what I would do.
Last question. What's your favorite summer activity in Greater Prescott?
So it's golf. I love to golf. That's my hobby. When I have downtime from work, Unfortunately, I don't really have summers now.
I know.
With work. But, we get days off and stuff. So if I get a day off, that's usually where you'll find me. Or, truthfully, depending on how the weeks were before my last day off, just sitting at home with my wife and hanging out and just enjoying being home and not being on the road. And that's really nice. Just to
the simple stuff.
Yeah, we have.
I know.
We have a bunch of dogs and a cat, and we take them out to the dog park or something. And maybe if I have 2 days off, I'll go golf one day and then hang out.
Yeah, it's
with
hard
her.
with just one day off to go play golf after being away for a bit.
Yeah, it's tough, and truthfully, you're tired. Just being on the road, and it takes a lot out of you. Yeah. You're just living out of a bag, and again, wouldn't change it for the world.
Of course not,
but
it's just its own unique
so
lifestyle.
Just being home in the summer sometimes is just nice, and just sitting down in air conditioning, and, just hanging out, getting some good food. The food's usually good on fires, but there's nights where you're eating MREs and stuff, and again, you can eat them. They're good, but they get old.
Right.
So to be able to just come home and have your favorite thing that you haven't had, it's that's good.
Well said. To wrap it up, give people a kind of a sense of who, what, when, where, why of you. Better said, just tell them something like, if you guys have questions about this or that, just kind of give them a little pitch to this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you have questions, my door is always open. I do have a Facebook page for the business.
I'll put up all this information.
Yeah, okay. So it's Fuel Break. My cell phone number's on there. It's my personal cell phone number. Yes, it still has a New Hampshire area code, so you'll see that. We also have an email as well. And even if you just want me to come out and just have a discussion and take a look, I do all quotes, bids, all of that. It's all free. There's no obligations. There's none of that stuff. So if you just want me to come out, have a conversation, maybe take a look at something, even if you're not ready right now, it's still a great time to just maybe get ahead of it and say, hey, okay, maybe we need to take a look at this in the near future. I guess my biggest piece of advice is fire season is right around the corner. I mean, we got that snow, but that wasn't close to enough for what we need as far as moisture. It's been so long since we've gotten anything. So, I mean, there's never a bad time to FireWise your property, whether it's in the middle of fire season or get a tree removed or get trees limbed. There's never a bad time, but definitely think about it. If it's something you've thought about and you just maybe haven't pulled the trigger or didn't know who to contact, definitely give us a call, and we'd be more than happy to head out and come and see you and see what we can do.
I almost always end the same way. You're the expert. Just ask them questions, guys. Literally, that's where most people start. They don't know what to do. They don't know how they should do it. They don't know in what time frame. They don't know how much it costs. Whether it's your wife at the hair salon or someone who does photography, people just have questions. And as you guys can tell, Adam has a lot of answers and will at least be able to steer you in a direction that gives you more information so that you can take the next steps, whatever those are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I brought these just to, if people are watching the video, but I have 2 things that I usually bring to all my customers, unless it's a repeat customer and they kind of know the drill. But they're directly from firewise.org.
Okay.
And they're pamphlets on what's recommended, what's expected, some things to look out for, and I leave these with customers to show them, and you can certainly go on their website. They have things from home safety checklists to, what you should be looking at in your immediate perimeter of your house versus your intermediate versus your, further away from the house. And there's different things that should be done the closer you get. So I really try to give as much information as possible to people. So, that's
what people need.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So there's a ton of information out there. It's a fantastic website. If you don't want to call or you're afraid to, call or contact, definitely go visit that site. Yeah, and you can definitely take a look on there, and they're going to give you a lot of great information too. Yeah. So,
well said. It's so much fun to learn. So I knew you did the wildland firefighting things, and I knew a little bit about the tree service business, but I had no idea about the past. And so it's fun just to start from the beginning and have you lay it all out, and just how everything just kind of comes together to put you where you are now. It's fascinating.
No, it's been crazy. It's been a wild ride, and
right?
It took me almost 30 years to figure out what I wanted to do, but
I still don't know what I want to do.
Yeah, but I'm glad I found something I'm passionate about, and that makes it fun to go to work, whether it's doing the fuel break stuff or doing the wildland stuff in the on season. Like it's, I wake up every day and feel pretty blessed that I get to do something that I enjoy, because I know a lot of people, and I've been there doing a job that you hate, so it's a lot of fun, and I look forward to doing it for a long time.
Awesome. Anything else before we close it up?
No, I think
we covered a lot of ground. It's great. That's the fun of it. We just get to talk, and people get a sense of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Let's end. Well, number one, just thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for the offer to come. It's been a blast.
You're welcome.
You've been nothing but great. So
I'll put up all your info. If you guys have any questions, let Adam know.
Yes.
That's where I just always want people to begin, because people don't know.
Absolutely.
They don't know. They think they know, but they don't know, and there's nothing wrong with that. And someone like Adam will get you guys all the information you need. So, again, thank you, Adam, for your time.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Let's end it with a nice big smile.
All right.
Have a great day, you guys.